Hey everybody, the Red Gamer here from Urban Gaming Elite, bringing you a look at Ubisoft's The Crew, which has had their second closed beta for the PC recently, running from August 25th to August 29th. We were fortunate enough to have access to the closed beta and want to showcase some of the gameplay and our opinion of the game so far. Now, just to kind of let you know, this video is also intended as a bit of a beta review for the group over at Ubisoft, so nitpicking is intended and within. However, I have kept some of the more minor items towards the very end of the video. Now, for those of you who are unaware of the game, The Crew is a racing game meant to embody the high-speed, entertaining racing style similar to Need for Speed, as opposed to the simulation styles like Gran Turismo or Forza Racing. Now, quite a few design features are similar to the Need for Speed series, specifically in its feel, kind of the design, all the way from the interface to the cars. However, one of the most notable distinct features is the massive racing map, seen earlier as an entire United States. Now, all parts of the country have tracks available, and in free roam, you can actually travel from coast to coast, which takes about 90 minutes to do, and contains enough track that to race at all would be a considerable amount of time. Now, getting into the game here, the story is centered around a racer getting framed for his brother's murder and sent to prison. As part of an early release, he works with the feds to bring down the leader of a group known as the 510 Gang, by essentially racing up the ranks, getting in with the different crews, and bringing them down. It also turns out that the guy who framed you for murder, of course, is the leader you aim to take down. From here, you try to make nice with members of the crew, form your own alliances, and work to take them all down with preset challenges set along the way. Now honestly, it's a racing game, story is rather basic at most points, but this one tries a bit too hard to make it feel relatable or realistic without doing the necessary research or build-up. Lots of things go unexplained, and emotional moments just feel cheap and thrown together due to a lack of the build-up. For example, the first big emotional moment happens in less than 10 minutes. Little is explained as to how he gets framed, and the coincidence of your brother being the leader of the 510 gang taking you, a nobody, to talk to some guy you've never even met, kinda comes across a little weird. In the end, it's a bit cheesy and really is hard to believe at any point, making the entire story feel forced. With some cleaning up of the dialogue and maybe rewriting a bit more purpose into the story, it could shine, but truthfully I put little stock in story for racing games, so it matters little. Graphically, the game looks pristine, with car models being smoothly designed and tracks and environments looking realistic, although a bit redundant when doing a long trip across the states. Cinematically is where this game really shows polish, with character models being some of the most realistic I've ever seen. A few gripes on the setup, with the 30 frames per second lock being annoying for a PC game. This does create a bit of tearing when going at high speeds, and cars seem to stutter a bit as well, but it does make it harder to observe slight differences in the environment, including when cars are merging into traffic. It seems to be a bit shoddy in its execution, but overall the graphics look nice. Customization of rides is what one would expect, with performance upgrades and visual changes being applicable. The game introduces these starter kits that transform a ride to a specific style, whether it be street, performance, or like a dirt. Now in the beta, only the street was utilized for us, and it provided a decent boost with zero cost, as the first one was free. While the customization is decent, there doesn't seem to be any specific tuning setup like ride height, transmission setup, or even changing up the NOS from a quick boost to a long draw, which was slightly disappointing. Furthermore, the customization system is too standardized and really easy. All parts are a simple yes or no upgrade, meaning you find or win a better part, you equip it, and your ride works better, end of story. There seems to be very little give and take in this scenario, which drastically reduces the desire to play with different tuning setups, nor does it actually have any compromise between parts. This follows through in racing as well, with all races seeming to offer upgrades for victory and very little cash. Upgrades can be purchased along with new cars, but the costs don't mesh well with earnings from the races. Not to mention, there's really no point, as by following the standard story mode races, and even taking bronze and silver a few times, my ride was well equipped to win any necessary race or event. In truth, the customization options for performance seem rather pointless, and with about $1,000 to $1,500 earned per race, and upgrades going up to $20,000 to $30,000, it doesn't really work together. Now, all races award potential medals in the standard bronze, silver, and gold arrangement, awarding cash based on performance and an upgrade for your ride. Now, these upgrades have titles to them, but don't give any real indication of what exactly they improve, with an example being an upgraded engine giving you just enhanced performance. Whether that means an upgraded acceleration or top speed is unknown. So in the game, you have to rely on their number system. Higher numbers equal good, lower numbers equal bad. However, the cars aren't the only point system in the game. Success determination is based on an arbitrary setup of points as well. Earn this many you get bronze, this many you get silver, etc. The problem is, there isn't a great explanation of what gets what points. It's explained how to get more, and it says at the end how far you were from the next level, but in truth you have no idea if you need to go faster, stay on the road more, take less damage, or something different. Not to mention, there's no point counter displayed while racing, so in the middle of the actual race, you have no idea if you're close to what you want or not. This is probably the worst design decision of the game. Oversimplified point systems ruin games in general, and especially in racing. Why they decided not to use standard metrics like first, second, third place is beyond me, as it'd be much easier to understand and know where you stand than an extremely arbitrary point system. By including this system with really no scale to measure it against, it's kind of hard to gauge yourself in the middle of the race. There are other annoying point systems that includes the experience, which raises points of car, which is necessary to qualify for the races, but again it's arbitrary and doesn't really factor in anything else. Experience also translates into levels, which can provide perk points, granting variable items such as more money and experience from races, deals on upgrades, and others, which are customizable to your decisions. Kind of come together in a weird way, because never once did I not qualify for a race following the straight story missions. There was no real need to go to an upgrade system, as the upgrades I got from the race always gave me what I needed, and a lot of the other point systems, including the experience, were just whatever to me. I felt no need to try to level up, nor did I see really any difference of effect from doing so. Now, the mechanics of the game are another issue, with the physics model and driving setup needing a major overhaul. Now, numerous comments about this have been made on the beta forums already, but the issue seems to be more centered around an oversensitive control scheme. The car tends to rock back and forth a lot and doesn't respond well to precise motions. Now, this causes a lot of crashes as you're trying to stabilize the car, either coming out of a turn or when you're trying to weave in between cars, which just gets harder to do and harder to control as the speeds increase. Now, I understand the physical aspect of this, and I understand they're maybe trying to create some better realism of how the car handles, but honestly, at this point, without a racing wheel, trying to weave in and out of traffic feels impossible and extremely annoying. And to put this into perspective, we did test this on 2 different controllers and the mouse and keyboard, and we saw the effect the same across the board. There's also a bit of lag in how it actually responds to your control at times, sometimes causing you to oversteer and understeer at a precise moment. Collisions have a similar effect, with barriers sending the car flying, while stronger objects seem to be broken through with little effect. The turning, accelerating, and braking work alright, but they seem to lack polish. Unfortunately, combined with the issues mentioned above, if you feel you need stronger braking, it's not obvious if the upgrade you will earn, or even purchase, will give you that or not. Beyond the mechanics, gameplay is actually pretty well designed, with the variants and race types keeping it interesting, along with mini events scattered throughout, which do come in handy when you're doing your long cross-country trips to get from one state to the next. Races feel authentic, and with the variable course layout and checkpoint-based navigation system, each race is an exciting and white-knuckle event. In the early part of the game especially, many of the races along the story path put you into predetermined cars, which was a bit weird as they award upgrades for your standard ride, then force you to drive a ride you've never done, nor have you had a chance to tune. Even worse is you spend all of your time upgrading your own ride to seemingly race in it less than half of the time, and not to mention having to be stuck in another ride you didn't even get to set up, as if it doesn't fit your style or desire, it's a bit frustrating to try to race with. Now combine this with the point system I mentioned earlier, and you also have no indication of what you're doing wrong. This wouldn't necessarily be a huge issue if they were not as common as they are in the game so far, or even if they were optional side missions, although this is something that may decrease as one proceeds into the game. This being a beta setup and being towards the beginning, it's understandable that it might be something that kind of tapers off as you go through, as kind of an embedded tutorial system. Now, there are a couple minor elements that I noticed throughout the game as well, which were not necessarily breaking, but things that I thought should have either been brought to attention or should have really been fixed before this point. Now, some of the minor elements need work, especially with the dialogue between the characters. Whenever you are racing and you have someone talking in your ear, they just get constantly annoying, critiquing your driving or yelling at you for not being in first. Now, the first time it's kind of interesting, but very quickly just becomes aggravating, especially if you have trouble finishing a race and you have to hear the same dialogue over and over again. Now, this is a decision that they made that we've seen in other games and people in general do not like. It kind of indicates a lack of research on their part and is a bit disappointing to see at this point in the development. Game information is also not given in the best way, with races not being well defined as to what exactly they are, what car you may be using, whether it's your own or a predetermined ride, or even what the general objective is going to be. Now, you can figure this information out, but you have to go through a couple different menus to figure out the name of it and then backtrack what that name actually means. A little too much work for something as simple as that. Now, you do realize it once you actually start the race, but if you run into a race that you may need to upgrade your ride for, it'd be nice to have an idea of what you're heading into as opposed to being given a ride and knowing that information ahead of time. Now, this lack of information is found in numerous other components as well, including making it obvious what the upgrades are for and how much they may improve a ride. For a game that seemingly loves numbers and kind of arbitrary pieces, they don't even give you a scale to measure acceleration, top speed, braking, or control with. Now, if the game was more based as a simulation mechanic and were given very specific part names, it'd be a little bit easier to understand. Installing a transmission with a 6-gear ratio to outfit of 4 helps explain kind of what you're doing, instead of just being called an engine upgrade and adding 2 points to your car. In truth, tooltips should be included on a lot more items, and would be nice if important information was a bit more obvious on screen or easier to access when needed. There are some nonsensical things that pop up throughout the game as well, including one mission where you're fighting for a spot against someone you supposedly have been feuding with. Yet, the voice is so replaceable I didn't recognize the character, nor did that bit of commentary add any effect to the race. It didn't help that the race was a simplistic drag race that you had no knowledge of before and took very little skill to do. Hold down the X button, keep going forward, and win. There are some things that just seem to be bad design decisions as well. For one, the cockpit view, otherwise known as the in-car view, is absolutely splendid. Giving a realistic view of how far away from the windshield you are in some of these beefier cars is a mechanic I haven't seen in a lot of games before. However, the rear view mirror doesn't really do anything, which is kind of half the point of this view. Not to mention the overlays of the UI tend to obstruct your already restricted view, which can get very annoying in the middle of a race. Prompts that appear for finishing a mini event require you to confirm to close them while you're trying to also navigate the road and not crash into traffic. Now, while these don't specifically happen in a race, it's still an overlooked annoyance. The story premise is also way too linear, being essentially an errand boy pushing you from one mission to the next, giving you upgrades that easily over-upgrade your ride. This element kills the open world feeling of the game, as exploration for the hidden car parts, side mission races, or whatnot feels unnecessary and pointless. Races don't seem to require variances in cars and just run on a stronger is better mentality. For most open world environments, the side missions are used to get more money, parts, or etc. to upgrade and making the next missions easier and more fun. Unfortunately, in the way the game is currently designed, it feels more like a linear progression game that got turned into open world simply because they had to match what everyone else is doing. Now, a lot of these elements we've talked about are kind of negatives. There are a lot of things the crew does well, and I do want to highlight those as well. Despite the issues, there are a lot of features in this game I do like. Specifically, as I mentioned earlier, the in-car view is probably one of the best design items I've ever seen in a game, and I really like the immersion it brings. Not only does it give you a good visual perspective and give you the right element of how restricted your windshield actually is, even the audio of the game from the car to the environment change accordingly, giving you the feeling of being inside the car instead of viewing it from outside. The model interaction with the shifting and even the wheel is extremely realistic, as is the actual design of the interior of the car. If only the rear view mirror worked, it would be completely stellar, although the view is almost impossible to use during rally events or some of the bump and rides because of the shaking around over the course. With a beefy front end ride like the Dodge Challenger, the car I was using, the field of view is slightly restricted when they make great use of it in design. Now, other, shorter profile cars have a much better view and a distinct interior change. Furthermore, interaction of sliding around corners, swinging around with the handbrake, and all those other different elements were just well designed and felt great from this view. You truly felt like you were inside of the car at all points. Although I have to say, the most interesting part was actually when I hit a wall going way too fast and crashed, flipping the car over. Now, the game kept me in this view this entire time, and you actually saw the car sliding along the wall. Something you just don't see in many games as they would reset at this point, and I really enjoyed that immersion. Audio within the game is also really well designed, with the car and environmental sounds working well together, and the music never seeming to overpower the actual gameplay sounds, including even the music dimming a bit when characters are talking, or when different dynamic ranges call for it. In truth, the dynamic ranges were a great element of this game in general, so when something gets really loud or you hit something, the sound is well optimized. Sounds don't get too loud, blowing out eardrums for headphone users, or make things really hard to hear when necessary. Now, this may seem like a small, kind of minor thing, but so many games fail to optimize these features, and it adds an annoyance, especially for PC gamers who tend to play on headsets. Many of the interactable features on the HUD are also really well designed and easy to use, including the mini-map, which can be extended when needing to map out a more precise route either in the middle of a race or during a police escape. Now, the overall map also looks well designed and easy to use, although it would be nice if it had a more smooth zoom feature instead of a stepped zoom, where 3 clicks of the zoom button brings you in as close as you can be, instead of kind of a more scroll wheel effect. The speedometer is well designed and fun to see, with the NOS gauge blinking a distinct color once full, allowing you to keep your eyes on the race. Now, other elements also follow the same path, with the damage indicator being a great example as it's a distinct and noticeable color. Now, all these elements are really great as they help you keep your focus on the race and less on the interface for necessary information. Beyond that, the gameplay itself is not bad. It seems to have a decent concept and a great kind of path it's going, it just has a lot of issues that I feel should have been fleshed out before the beta. Now, all in all, The Crew is a decent looking game that has a lot of potential for being a great game. but unfortunately as it currently stands in the beta, I'm not optimistic. Much of the game's visuals and audio are great, but it seems they spent way too much time on the visual design aspects instead of the actual game mechanics, which created the issues we see in the drive control, AI, and even the crappy story. Now, unfortunately, with the scheduled release coming up in 3 months, they have a lot of work to do to fix some of the actual design and mechanics issues, which means they probably won't make any of the other changes I feel are necessary to bring clarity for the story and fix some of the minor issues. I do like the game concept, but as it stands, it's not a recommendation unless they can fix the game mechanics at the very least, to add that necessary precision to the drive controls. Now, they are set up to do another closed beta for consoles sometime in September, which we'll put a link down for below if you want to try to apply for. Hopefully by then we might see some variants in it, or even as the game comes into actually doing release videos and trailers, we might see some changes in it then. I do want to say thank you for everyone for kind of tuning into this. If you don't know already, I'm the Red Gamer. I work over with Urban Gaming Elite, which we're a next-generation gaming media platform that focuses on reviews, previews, articles, and other unique gaming content produced by gamers for gamers every single day. Now, for those that have tuned in again, thanks for checking it out, and let me know what you think of the game and how it currently stands in the comments below. And until then, see you guys on the racetrack.